excited today to talk about family offices and what family offices look at. And also, just, I've heard this so many times, and some of you probably heard this. If you've seen one family office, you've seen one family office. So don't take this as an overview of what every family office looks at. Every family office is so different. We heard this morning, some people were talking about, personal passions, and sometimes families get involved because they have a child or a friend or a family member who's ill, and suddenly they start to go down the rabbit hole to look for investments that might solve a family health crisis, or they have some other reason that they want to get involved. So we're going to talk a little bit family offices. I'm not going down the line. I'm actually starting alphabetically. So Amy is both first and last name, Amy Anderson. So she's either way, she's going to go first today. I'm just going to ask each of the panelists to just take 1 or 2 minutes and just tell us a little bit about themselves and what they're looking at and how they became an investor, and kind of just a quick overview. Thanks, Amy.
So I'm Amy Rees. I told her I always have to go first. It's really unfair. I'm Amy Rees Anderson. I started out as an entrepreneur at the age of 23, started my first healthcare technology company, founded Advanced MD, if you've heard of that company in healthcare technology, and the last company I had was MetaConnect Global, which I grew and sold in 2012, and at that point started Rees Capital, our family office. And we invest in everything across the board now. I mean, it used to be a lot of direct angel investing. Now we do a lot of fund investing as well, and do a lot of philanthropy. So that's me.
And I love. And why don't you also tell us where you live, because I think it's important.
I live here. I actually grew up in Oregon, Washington, Michigan, Virginia, Tennessee, Texas, California, and now I live here in Utah. So.
John Dvor, please go next.
Hello, everybody. So John Dvor. So I'm based in the Boston area. My career, really straightforward, about 5 years in the Marine Corps and Special Forces with the White House, and then about 10 years on operating, investing in healthcare. So I was in corporate venture at a health plan in Massachusetts, MedTech venture fund, iRobot Corporation. But then after about 10 years, I shifted. I worked with a family office doing really PE, just doing buyouts. And then over some 10 years, I've worked especially on family office-led deals. So EE Corporate Group was actually London-based. It's a family office based in UK, and we really do syndicate deals, family office-led deals. So we're in UK and we're in Washington, D.C. So with my military background, we work a lot with, in global healthcare, there's a lot of benefits, to work between Europe and U.S., and because there's an arbitrage between the United States and Europe and other regions to get clinicals and other clinical data to move quickly. So.
Thanks, John. And sorry, David, I'm going alphabetical, so I'm going to go to Frank next.
Sure. So yeah, Frank Langston. I was a multi-time founder, entrepreneur, started a couple tech companies, had a fintech company that I ran for 10 years, and then sold that at the start of COVID, and that's how I got into biotech through a bit of a sideways door. Ended up building a large COVID response business as part of Ginkgo Bioworks in Boston, but moved here at the same time. So I answered that question, live in Park City, and then continued to kind of meet more folks in the biotech space, and ended up joining one of the Teal Biofund portfolio companies, and from that kind of took that into actually operating on the fund side, kind of half my time as more operating partner, half the time on the investing side. So. Yeah.
Great, and we're so excited to have you here. And David, last but not least.
Hi, I'm David Luftglass. I'm the CEO of Renaissance Assets. We're a family office style asset management company. My journey started about a decade ago with a crypto fund. I raised $41,000, $1,000 from all of my friends and family, and then built that up over the years into a very diverse portfolio of assets across different industries. My co-founder on this firm is the current chief of health from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So we have access to a lot of interesting technologies through his network, and we really focus on finding geniuses that have built something and proven it and don't really know how to commercialize and scale it up. So we build a business around them and help them succeed globally.
Great, thank you. So you can see we have a pretty diverse panel here. I'm going to ask the panelists, we're going to drill down a little bit into the types of companies that they invest in and why. And then I'd really like you to talk specifically about a specific area of focus, and maybe even, this is sort of a long question, right? And the stage, like what stage company do you look at? So Frank, our focus today is on how family offices can be an investment partner for healthcare companies. So why don't you give an overview of the types of healthcare companies you look at, stage, size, and how do you analyze them?
Absolutely. So I think to start at the end there, we've done everything from a first check-in $1 million seed round to leading $100 million Series DE rounds, and staying with those companies through the public markets. So pretty stage agnostic, about as stage agnostic as you can be. Ultimately, what we're looking for is companies that can have like an unfair competitive advantage and in very large markets. So we also operate in an ecosystem where there's a lot of capital deployed into tech. One of the things we're always looking at is, where are the rest of the $50 billion biotech companies, and how do we go and find what's going to who's actually aiming for that first of all, and then who can actually get there. So we're really looking for those, and also spaces that a lot of other people don't pay attention to. So we were some of the first capital into the early CAR T therapies, some early antibody companies, early psychedelic companies, things that most of traditional biotech VCs tend to follow a little more pattern matching, and we try to go for the ones that don't fit the pattern yet or have more biology risk.
And let me just ask a little bit about that again too, from a family office perspective, right? A lot of times family offices can do something that the VCs aren't doing. So can you just talk a little bit about that, where you said, you're not following what the VCs are doing? I think that'd be helpful.
Yep, and I would go back to your if you've seen one family office, you've definitely only seen one family office here, but it would be the biggest difference is capital horizon, right? So you could also think of it more of an evergreen fund in a way, but it's we're really chasing outsized returns versus fund type. We don't have fund math to run as much. We have more okay, what's the best way to deliver net return across the entire kind of ecosystem that we're part of. And that gives us the ability to stay with companies longer. And the biggest question on the winners is just how long you stick around. So we don't want to leave a lot of that upside on the table. Whereas from a fund standpoint, right, you've got to deliver on those individual fund economics and maybe you recycle into the next fund, but it's just a totally different calculus.
Patient capital, right? That's what we hear a lot from family offices. David, at Renaissance, you're putting your personal capital work alongside others. So how does that influence what you look at, since you're putting personal capital in it?
Yeah. So we really focus on things that are at commercial inflection points. We don't like to come in too early until something's really proven and ready for the market. And we, with putting personal capital into things, we have to be that much more careful. It's, earning dollars is hard, and we want to protect them as much as we can and do it over and over. And a big piece of what we do is we bring on co-partners. So we'll come in with the first check, lead a round, and then bring in another group behind us to take the rest of it and kind of scale up from there to really make things happen. And a big part of what we focus on is where we can really add value. We have a really unique team when it comes to advisory capacities, building keystone partnerships, and scaling these technologies into other countries that might have much faster commercial pathways than the US. So we really focus on places where we can really add value. And anytime you're putting personal capital into anything, you're gonna take an extra week to look at everything, take your time, and not rush the deal.
And just a side note, where were you last week?
I was in Korea, Thailand, and Taiwan, and then I'm going to Uruguay tomorrow. I travel about 300 some days of the year, just looking to meet interesting people, find new tech, and see what we can do to bring it to market everywhere.
So we're very excited to have you here. I was surprised. We had lunch yesterday, and you didn't have jet lag. I'm like, I don't know what you're doing, but living good. John, why don't you talk about how you're analyzing investments and what you look for in the healthcare space? And then also because you and I have known each other for many years, you've worked with other family offices. So how do you also act on behalf of other families?
Absolutely. So with EE, we're very focused on where we can provide value and use our respective networks. I think it comes down to international networks is a really core part of it. So I was myself and friends, we were early investors in SSI. It was a breakthrough surgical robot company, but it really came through personal relationships we knew in Florida and New York. And of course your firm has worked with them. One of the most important global medical surgical robot companies now, right, as a US-India platform. I think, but it really started from veterans in the industry over many years. We work with people like Fred Moll, who is viewed to be the inventor of the first commercial, surgical robot company, Intuitive Surgical. I think that also, we worked, myself and some colleagues worked many years in regenerative medicine. This is actually something that brings us to Utah for the last 2 years more, because we were very focused on the commercialization of devices and biologics in the revolution of biologics and medical devices, of which there's a lot of law. Utah is very friendly with certain new laws that were passed last year. So I think that there's a lot of technology relationships in breakthrough technologies, but also in very practical terms, there's also an international deal flow. We worked many years between Israel, between specific networks in UK, because we're founded in UK and US, and I think a lot of it really comes down to getting great opportunities requires strong relationships in diverse regions to really get in early before a larger number of investors know about the deals and get in later. So you want to get better terms early on.
Great, thank you, and thanks for the shout out to Utah. I'm sure everybody here is happy to hear that. Amy, you talked about your background as an entrepreneur. So how does that influence how and where you invest and what type of companies you're looking at?
So, it's funny because as an entrepreneur, you know how to run and grow businesses, and then all of a sudden you have these exits and you got to invest it, and that's not what you did before. So it's like starting all over again in a way you didn't know you'd have to. So I was so excited at first to be able to take our money and invest in a ton of angel deals and help all these young entrepreneurs getting started, and you quickly start to find out your time, it becomes your most valuable asset, which it's hard because you want to be there to help all of them hands-on, but the amount of help it takes when you're going in that early stage, it becomes really hard to scale that. And so we kind of went from doing a lot of early stage deals to then doing later stage deals to now doing a lot more in collaboration with big funds. And you start to really understand the value of groups like yours that come to the table and help you, because it's really not at least it wasn't my forte as an entrepreneur to do this side of it. And I'd always been on the other side of the negotiating table raising capital. So for me to have the advisors around me, we've really learned to seek out really good help from different groups that can help advise us on what to do. And we do a lot in collaboration with especially the groups where we know the individuals that are the partners in the firms when it comes to who we're doing the financial investments with. I care about trust more than anything. Integrity and trust mean everything to me. To your point, when you've earned the money yourself, you care about it a little bit more than if it's just somebody else's money. And so we tend to due diligence ad nauseum, just because we want to make sure, you also have the problem of you've been there and done it, so now you know exactly what to look for that could be wrong. So we definitely do a lot of diligence up front. But we've really broadened, healthcare technology was my forte. That was what I knew. I was great at designing systems and data analytics and all that. But we've really learned how to diversify what we're doing for the risk factors and to get involved in other things. And to the point that was brought up about Utah is such an amazing, I lived all over the country. And what's amazing about Utah is you have this kind of unique upbringing of everybody who's really focused on self-reliance and entrepreneurship and things like that. And then you have these universities that are all so close to each other doing incredible work. So you put those two things together with a state that's really pro-business and friendly to business, and it's just an amazing hub of activity that goes on here where you do end up doing deals from all over the world just right here in Utah. So amazing things that go on here.
That's great, thank you. And I'll give a shout out to Kelvin and the Bio Utah and the BioHype
awesome.
community too, that helps brings people like me here to the state to see what's going on. I'm gonna go off script for a second because I really would love to have each of you talk about one specific company that you're working on, just to kind of give a flavor of what we're talking about, so not so general. And David, I'm going to make you start just because I love what company I'm talking about. So I'm going to let you talk about the 3D printing company. Like, I don't think of 3D printing as healthcare, so why don't you talk about what you're doing in that space?
Yeah, thank you. So this is kind of a fun one. Basically, one of our projects, it's one of the most advanced 3D bioprinters in the world. And when people hear bioprinter, printing cells and tissue structures, layering them together, their first thought is, oh, we can print organs. You can print hearts and lungs and replace people's things. And that's just so far out with FDA timelines and really efficacy that it's not really a viable option. But what works today is we can basically use it as a diagnostic tool for hyper-personalized medicine. So when someone gets a biopsy of their cancer, for example, normally they do studies on those cells, and then they'll dispose of them, throw them away when they're done. What we can do is take those biopsies, isolate the cancer cells, clone those cells, turn that into an ink for our printer with the DNA and biologics of that patient inside of it, and then print out 24 or 32 different versions of that tumor external to the body and try all of the treatments outside. Just find the toxicity levels, efficacy levels, and really find that sweet spot on what's going to make that person healthy. So yeah, there's a lot of other use cases behind it, but that's kind of one we're super excited about.
Well, and especially there's a lot of talk lately about precision medicine, and here's what you can really do in that space. John, because you get a shout out to Utah, why don't you talk a little bit about the company that you're working on and why it relates to Utah?
Absolutely. So I one of the high net worth, remarkable leaders we work with is the former president of L'Oreal, Mr. Jim Morrison. So he's not the rock star. He's an Irish New Yorker. So
Rock star, and he's making all of us women look a little bit better.
so it's a very so look there's a big convergence of regenerative medicine and medical aesthetics, right? So everyone knows that there's a lot of technologies to change how skin looks and feels, the face, the body parts. But it's the truth of the matter is that functional medicine, concierge medicine, the really cutting edge physicians, they need the best services and technologies. And so one of our major investments are working with Mr. Morrison, and essentially it's a holding company, which are working with many breakthrough technologies from medical devices, from biologics, and integrated therapies. And notably, this is very practical, that last year, so Utah legalized some of these biologic products, and actually in complete, getting ahead of the FDA. I'll just leave it at that. This is a very big deal because the truth is that many Americans, when they want breakthrough procedures for their joints, for their skin, for their other wide range of other needs, if they're fed up with their options in the United States, they say, you know what? I'm going to Mexico. I'm going to Thailand. I'm going to Istanbul. I'm going far away. It's a very big problem in medical care. So with Kansana Holdings is our business with Mr. Morrison. Bottom line is it's a holding company to bring these products and services from all over the world to great physicians to use them. And Utah is a real pioneer in the legalization of this, and we expect that Florida will be next, and some other regions like Texas, the United States. But this is a really good example of how you can have breakthrough technologies, but you need regulatory to work with physicians and patients, and also innovators to build those technologies faster. So we're really pleased to what's happening here.
Great. And Amy, I'm going to put you on this spot. Can you share one company that you're excited about, whether it's early stage or later stage, and why you are excited?
Yeah, I'll share two, but I'll do it quick. I'll do it quick. So there's a group here. So I talked about the university systems here in Utah. The University of Utah years ago started a program that's called the Center for Medical Innovation, where it takes the engineering school, the medical school, and the business school and merges them together to come together and come up with new and inventive products and things in healthcare. And it's a program, so they kind of do a Shark Tanky bench to bedside where it's grown, and now they've included other university students that don't have the medical resources that the U does, and they come together and invent these products. And one of them that was done many, many years ago, and the faculty get involved, and the doctors, and they've unbelievable things that are coming out of this program that they've started there. And if you ever want to go visit, it's called Center for Medical Innovation up at the U of U. It's amazing. But one of the products that was launched years ago was a single-use laparoscopic camera for surgery. And this is going to sound, I was trying to tell these guys, how do you describe it classy? It's a camera, but when they were in the body, usually they wipe it on the side of the organ they're trying to look at when it gets bloody. I mean, that sounds gross, but this is how they originally pitched it to me. But what they've done is think of an eyelid that blinks at the end of the camera, right, on a single-use camera, so they can actually just have it blink and clean the camera off for surgery. It seems like such a duh kind of thing, right? And so that actually launched years ago out of the bench to bedside. They're getting their FDA approval this next year, during 2025. So it's a long process always to get it there. The regulatory part is the hardest part about those investments. But when you see things like that are so simple, but awesome and just totally revolutionary in what they'll do, those are the things I get excited about on that end. On the other end of the spectrum, totally not healthcare related, is things like we invested in it's a consolidation of porta potty rentals. which is killing it right now. So, I mean, who would have known that, I'm in the crapper business and it's awesome. But it's like they literally rent them out for construction and for big concerts and events. And so an entrepreneur in Tennessee just started to notice it was an industry that was fragmented, and they started to consolidate them. And through working with Cynosure, which is one of the amazing big funds here in Utah that does incredible work, we were able to meet this company and become part of that. And so it's amazing the spectrum of things we've invested in, but it typically for us comes down to who are the people and what's the impact it has on people's lives, right? Like it's the skin thing, we really appreciate what he's doing there. And the rental porta potty, we all appreciate that, and the camera thing. I mean, it's about how it affects people's lives. Does it make them better, in addition to the fact it makes good money?
That's great, thank you. Frank, would you like to share a company or two?
Sure. So I'll go to kind of the theme in terms of we have a company in the orthopedic therapeutic space, which usually those two words don't go together. And late stage, and there's a lot of kind of classic thinking in biotech around like, it's anti-infectives. Like there are no outlier winners these days in anti-infectives. It's not really a space anymore. And then other than like from an antimicrobial AMR standpoint, and then integrating into the clinic from an orthopedic like care delivery, you have the device companies, but you don't have therapeutics companies. The device companies have tried to go in, and they haven't really had success bringing things into the portfolio from the therapeutic side. So, so this is a company that's in phase 2b3, starting phase 2b3 trials for basically reducing joint infections, and has we think a very strong product. But it's we've been with the company from the beginning, and now we're doing like Series D with them. So. That's a company that we think is exciting. That it's interesting because we all stay with it because it's like even now as we've de-risked so much of it, it's still something that just doesn't fit into a lot of those other portfolios. So one of the things we have to actually be very aware of when we're going in with some of this more like heterodox approach to earlier stage stuff is it's going to be hard to find others to actually come in. And so, how much are we willing to actually, like, are we willing to take it all the way through? Or how far are we willing to go in terms of like concentrated risk in those companies? And, usually that's how you get the biggest win too, because you end up owning a large portion of the company. But that's sort of another calculus we have to consider.
And I think that's another thing about family offices too, like depending on the size. How long do you want to stay? Thank you. How long do you want to stay in the company, right? But you're right. Like, you stay in longer, there's potentially a bigger payoff at the end. So let's flip to the other side for a second. Let's talk about what don't you invest in and why, and/or something you did invest in and wish you hadn't invested in. So I'll let you choose what you want to say about that one. And Frank, why don't you take that one?
The second part was did and wish you didn't?
Yes.
Okay. So things we don't, we generally haven't invested anything in oncology just as like a category, mainly because there's been so much capital and competition, and it's also harder to get like outlier wins. Those companies to become long-term successful, they pretty quickly get acquired. And we want more durable companies. I think things we wish we had invested in. I'm trying to go all the way to that.
Or maybe
far,
something
like,
that you
we think
something
like
you wish you had invested in but didn't.
You can go ahead and say the name of the companies you don't like.
Let's see. I think maybe I'll go to more of a category. We did a lot in the psychedelic space early for like psychiatric disorders, and I think we still, think there's a lot of potential in that space. I think we've been, less enthused with how they've actually like followed through on the regulatory paths. And we still are, have sort of chips on the table there, but I think that's an area where we certainly expected things to be a different place today than they are. Yeah.
Okay, David, do you want to take that one?
Yeah. We're working now. So things that we don't invest in, things that are too early stage. If it hasn't been proven yet, then we aren't interested. Is kind of a general rule for us. We need case studies and validation on the technologies. I don't invest in cannabis anymore. Had a lot of bad experiences in that industry with it just being saturated and just a it's a very hard industry to succeed in. So learned some good lessons there. Something I wish I'd gotten into earlier is
Cost of all the munchies.
exactly.
Vertically integrated.
Yep. The cryptocurrency industry. So that was kind of how I got my start. If I'd graduated college 3 years earlier, it'd be a very different world right now. It's because I basically, the second I got out, I put every dollar I put in, every dollar I made for my corporate job for about 3 years, living at my parents' house, into crypto because I kind of saw the potential, and then sold at the right inflection points. So that's something I wish I'd been, maybe wish I hadn't gone to college and had jumped right into that.
Don't say that too loudly. Don't say that around my children. Amy, why don't you take that one?
For me, arrogance. Like if somebody comes in and is arrogant, that is like the number one red flag for me. And arrogance, and then over-promising, under-delivering. I'm just a fan of people that are a little bit more realistic about things and are willing to say, I'd rather have someone be vulnerable to be like, yeah, we know there's competitors. This is what we're worried about. This is what we know we have to watch, than someone who comes in and says, oh, we've got this. Nobody can do what we're doing, because it's just not true. And so for me, that's a huge factor. And it also goes to when you're working with anyone, if you see a lack of integrity in any way, in any aspect of their life, it's going to affect your investment, whether you think it will or not. So for me, that's kind of a huge stay away from. The other things that are harder is when there is such a regulatory horizon that it's going to take forever. And that's hard because a lot of the stuff that we're dealing with at this conference is those types of things. So it's like there's the things you care about from a passion perspective, and then there's the things you care about from a financial return perspective. And so if there's too much regulatory steps that have to be, that is dependent on, it gets harder to come in if it's too early stage and have to see it all the way through. So that's why technology in healthcare is a little easier to invest in than it is to do some of the devices and whatnot.
Well, and I loved what you said about people come and say, like, we're the first person, nobody's ever done that. And I'm like, I just looked at 3 companies last week.
It's like the 7th one this week.
That means like, that tells me that you don't really know your business, right? I mean, I agree with you. I think that's a huge, huge red flag. And anytime you can make an absolute statement like that, you're bound to be proven wrong. Yeah.
Well, and it's nice when someone's, like, you want them to be vulnerable enough to say they need the help, because then you know that the experience you have can be of help to them.
Great. And John? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll say, well, in terms of war stories and regulatory, look, I mean, I was personally an investor with a syndicate. It was a cancer diagnosis company. Over 100 million went into it. And eventually, the company went bankrupt because they need another 200 million just for marketing, right, to really convince physicians to really get into it. It was a total write-off, right? I think that, you can have a lot of successes in this arena, but people don't talk enough about the bankruptcies and the failures, especially in venture capital. I'd say one thing I wish I would have invested in. I'll give just more of a positive story. So in the Boston community, one of the best entrepreneurs we ever had, it's a woman named Nicole Sahin. So she worked in an accounting outsourcing business, and she was almost too understated, and she had an idea to create the notion of creating an LLC in every single country. And then make it easier for people to employ globally, right? So she was almost too understated. I had an opportunity to invest in this back in like 2015. Now, it's a multi-billion-dollar company called Globalization Partners. You might have heard of it. It's based in Silicon Valley, and I could have invested it, lost some friends, and she was almost so understated that she could have gotten more investment, but it was just her way, and she built an incredible opportunity. Financially, it was very valuable. It also made it easier to create employment in a wide range of countries. So that was a big one that we missed.
And the one that got away. There's always going to be at least one that got away, right? Why don't we just take a second, and I'll ask one more question, and then I'll open it up to the audience. So this is a family office panel. I'm assuming there's some people in the audience who are entrepreneurs or maybe looking to raise capital. So why don't you talk about what advice you would give to a company that's looking to raise capital from family office? Like, how should they approach family offices? How should they find family offices, right? Like, so maybe give a little bit of information and sort of like the do's and don'ts. And John, why don't we let you start that one off?
Yeah, I think that, I've only been working in family offices for 10 years. I think a lot has changed last 10 years. I think that family offices, for the most part, are usually very clear about what they like and don't like. And so usually you can usually find out pretty easily what the interests are, I would say that that you have to really keep in mind mandate, but also oftentimes family offices in many cases still do invest with their personal interests in their region or their values, right? It's a very global industry, so I would actually strongly suggest, so whenever raising money with family offices, that you really, it's a very global industry, and actually a lot of people outside the U.S. do want to invest in U.S. innovation, and so I would strongly encourage that you focus on values, mandate, and also to not be too aggressive, because normally that's definitely an issue that everyone wants to raise capital, but you need to go with the processes that are quite often pretty clear within each investment team.
Thank you. And Amy, since you talked about values and you had talked a little bit about that before, why don't you talk about it from your perspective?
Yeah, I think for me, relationships are everything. And I think that's probably true of a lot of the family offices is you get so many, again, we go back to the time thing being your most valuable asset at that point because you've already had the financial success. So for you, the number of emails that come at you, the phone calls of people you don't know, it's like so overwhelming. You almost feel like you get almost like completely like I don't want anyone to come to me. So what ends up happening is if there's a relationship of someone that's trusted, a lot of the entities we've ended up investing in are because somebody that we had a relationship with let us know this is an actual company worth taking a look at. If it comes in cold, it's really hard for, at least in our situation, to get through, not because we don't care, but we don't have time. So it ends up being that we are trusting others who we know that are the experts in that field. So I would, if you're looking to raise from a family office, I would find out who that family office, who are the people that are connected to them, who are the friends that they've served on boards with or done things with in the past so that you can actually find a segue to get into that family office with a referral. If you can get someone that refers you, it makes all the difference in the world.
I'll tell a story. So I was at a conference a few years ago, and I met a family office. He was speaking, about his family's personal story, but they were seventh generation family and had been investing for over 100 years. And he used to change his name badge and make a fake one because if it said family office on it, everybody would come in. He'd come and ask him questions, and he said, people come up to me all the time, and they're like, "I've got the best hedge fund, and I'm going to give you a 40% return." And he said, "Why don't we have a cup of coffee and we'll start a conversation?" And he said, "And then in about 100 years, we'll have developed a good relationship." He said, "We've been investing with the Rockefellers for 100 years. He said, "So we'll have a coffee now, but in about 100 years, we'll think about putting money into your fund." And that was kind of that was really their philosophy. It was we've been around the block a few times, and we have these really, really strong relationships. And that always really made an impression on me. That that's how much he valued those long-term relationships. Sorry, Frank, I'll let you take that.
Sure. I mean, I'll just completely echo what Amy said in terms of, and I think that's not family offices. That's pretty much anyone you're raising capital from at any tier, from the public markets to a seed angel investor. Anytime it's coming in from anywhere that's already got some sort of social validation or trust, you're going to get a look. Otherwise, it's really hard. And so I think the tactical angles around that come to finding a very small group of individuals that you can be your vectors into that, right? Where can you build that trust? Maybe it was someone at a company, so you have a company you worked at, right? Or some other community you get involved with and build a relationship.
Like Bio Utah, for example, show up to the events,
exactly.
Be a part of the network.
And just nurture those, right? You have to play the long game to build trust. And then I think what Marcia is saying here as well is, I always talk about investors invest in lines, not dots. And you show up and you're expecting to make a decision on a single data point of interacting with you, right? They need to see that over time. So wherever you're able to start to surface that is helpful. And you'll also always fall into this trap of oh yeah, I'm interested, but who else is leading or who else is investing? Everyone wants to outsource their diligence, especially in, we operate a little more like a fund from a diligence standpoint, but a lot of family offices where you just don't have the bandwidth or the expertise. And so like you're looking for, okay, what's their validation? Is it in biotech? Like, is it a pharma validation? Is it experienced investor? Is it your advisory board? Like, and then how much do I trust that? So I think they all want to do that. So, but you have to like kind of map your path based on that, right? So like you need to get the one, and going around and saying, I've got a bunch of people interested, like isn't going to really like get you over the hump. And yeah.
Can I use the dot and line in my next panel? I'm going to use that. I love that. David, do you want to finish this off here?
Yeah, happy to. I would say the biggest thing for me is make sure you understand exactly who you're talking to and what they care about. Every family office is so different, like we've been talking about here. And make sure you add value. Understand their ecosystem, show how you plug into their ecosystem and how it affects the rest of their portfolio. Most of these people are looking for things that have larger scale implications and can really have an echo effect across their entire ecosystem and portfolio. And then another piece, if you're coming in with no network and are kind of trying to build your way in, start with the analysts. Start with the people on the ground and find your champion. Build a friend within that ecosystem, talk to the other analysts across the family office network, and work your way up. And the big thing with family offices is you just have to be patient. They aren't on fund structures. They don't have 7-year payback timelines. They're on generational timelines. They want to set themselves up for 100-year growth. And if you come in with that mindset, they'll respect it.
Thank you.
Or get one of their kids to recommend you to.
Exactly.
That's either
actually a
good
really
or
good
really
strategy.
bad. Depends on the kid.
Best consumer tech VCs, their investment strategy was just what were their kids doing?
Well, I think, I think 2008, 2009 was a real shift in the family office community. And really, I talk to families and they say, everybody just approaches us, by the time it gets to us, everybody just thinks we're dumb money. And I think family offices has gotten more sophisticated. They're acting more like funds, like Theo, right? Where they're hiring their own due diligence and they're bringing on private equity and venture capital experienced people who can run their family office. And so I think there's been a real shift. And I think, back to David a little bit, what you talked about, respecting them and treating them as they are smart and they made their money in certain ways. They just might not be smart about what you're talking about right now, but don't treat them like dumb money. And I think that you can tell, when somebody approaches you. We have 5 minutes, so I am going to give time for questions, and you have a microphone to run around with too. So if you have a question, when you raise your hand, and we'll bring the microphone. And if nobody has a question, I'll just ask another question. So this is your chance.
Or I can kick off with a question.
You can kick off with a question.
I'm curious how, talking about the different dynamics, the different timelines that family offices are operating on, how you think about co-investments and investment partners and what works and what doesn't.
That's great. That was actually my question. So that's perfect. Because that's really important too, because you aren't in a fund structure, right? So you do have to make sure that you are aligned. So, and David, why don't you lead this one off?
Yeah, happy to. On this one, I really focus on filling a hole or a gap within the company when bringing in money. I don't like dumb money, and there's not much dumb money out there anymore. But it's, really make sure you understand the weaknesses of your company and can fill a gap with that, or have a direct path to a keystone partnership on distribution are really the things we focus on. Yeah.
John, you want to take that?
I would say that for a lot of our deals, we want to get in way before traditional venture funds get in. So a group of high net worth and family offices invest, and we, especially if it's coming from from Israel or from Canada or from various other parts of ecosystems, getting in before and getting better terms than what a Series A or Series B venture investor may want is absolutely part of the strategy for our investments.
And Frank, what about you? Co-investment partners?
Yep. I think there's a couple of things we think about there. So one is control and incentives is big, right? So if we're going for a long-term outcome, either we want to make sure we have enough control to steer in that direction, or whoever else is around the table is aligned with that outcome. And then I think you also have to be looking at each round is not about that round. It's how's it setting you up for the next round and your ultimate outcome that you're going for. And who's going to be a problem in the next round, and are you willing to take that extra hidden cost of capital, so to speak, to go ahead and get moving on this round, or do we want to step up more or bring someone else in and just be more patient? So, I don't know, there's a couple of considerations. It's never really one size fits all, and we certainly have funds that we work with more closely than others. But it's really about like incentive alignment, or if they're not aligned, like, do we have sufficient control to make their incentives irrelevant? Like, I don't want to go up, like, you want them aligned, but like, if not, you want to make sure that yours are going to be the ones that govern.
Well, and do you buy them out if they like the timeline? So all of a sudden they have a health issue in their family and they need their capital, but you need it to fund your company, right? So like, there's a lot of different issues. Amy, I'll let you.
One of the shifts I really appreciated over the time that we've been doing it was a lot more of the funds have been willing to say, if you come and invest in the fund, then we'll let you direct co-invest as well, which it's actually happening more and more, which we really appreciate, because I think that's the biggest reason you're doing the family office of direct anything, is because you're avoiding those fees, because it kills you, but then you start to realize that there's some of them that are worth paying. But the funds that let you come in and then will let you participate direct as well, we do a lot more with those types of situations. And I think it's actually a really smart strategy from the fund perspective as well.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. I think we are out of time. So thank you. Please thank my panelists. They're amazing.